Park Yuna walked through the curved hallways of the Galactic Academy with her bag over her shoulder and wonder in her eyes. The walls were made of something that looked like glass, but felt warm when she touched it. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. She had been on the station for 3 weeks now, but she still felt like she was dreaming. She was 24 years old. She had black hair that she kept in a simple ponytail. She wore the gray uniform of an exchange observer, which meant she was here to learn, but not officially a student. Earth had only made contact with the galactic community 2 years ago, and humans were still very new to everything. Yuna was one of 12 humans allowed to visit the Academy this year. It was an honor. It was also terrifying. The Academy floated in space between 3 star systems. It was older than human civilization. Students came here from over 300 different species to study science, medicine, art, and philosophy. Some students were made of light. Some were made of crystal. Some looked like clouds of colored gas floating in special suits. Yuna had learned not to stare, but sometimes she still forgot. Today was her first day attending an actual class. She had spent the previous weeks learning the layout of the station and getting medical checks to make sure. She could breathe the air and eat the food. The doctors had been very careful with her. They treated her like she was made of paper and might break at any moment. She found this strange but said nothing. The classroom was a large circular room with seats that floated in the air at different heights. Yuna found a spot near the middle and sat down. The seat adjusted itself to her body automatically. It was comfortable in a way that made her a little nervous. Other students filled the room around her. A being made of blue crystal sat to her left. It made a soft, chiming sound that her translator told her meant, "Greeting, fellow student." She nodded and smiled. To her right was an empty seat, and beyond that, a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish inside a water-filled sphere. The room was cold by her standards, but she had been told this was the comfortable temperature for most species. She wore an extra layer under her uniform and did not complain. Professor Velith entered, through a door that appeared in the wall and then disappeared after they passed through. The professor was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. They were made of soft light, constantly shifting between pale gold and gentle silver. They had no solid form that Yuna could see, just a shape that suggested a body without actually being one. "Welcome, students," the professor said. Their voice came directly into Yuna's mind through her translator implant. Today, we begin our study of extreme planetary environments. Specifically, we will examine Class 12 Deathworlds. Yuna opened her tablet and prepared to take notes. Around her, she felt the mood in the room change. Students shifted in their seats. The crystal being beside her made a low humming sound that her translator called unease. She did not understand why everyone seemed worried. It was just a lecture about planets. Class 12 Deathworlds, the professor continued, are planets where conditions are so extreme that the development of complex life is considered nearly impossible. These worlds are studied from a distance only. No survey team has ever landed on a Class 12 world and returned. A student near the front raised what might have been a hand. "Professor, why do we study these worlds if we cannot visit them?" An excellent question. The professor's light flickered in what Yuna guessed was approval. "We study them to understand the outer limits of what nature can create. These worlds show us what happens when a planet becomes hostile to life itself. They are warnings. They are examples of what the universe can do at its most cruel." Yuna wrote this down. She was not sure why, but something in the professor's words made her feel strange. A small knot formed in her stomach. "Before we examine specific examples," the professor said, "let us review the characteristics that define a Class 12 death world. These are the factors that make a planet deadly to all known forms of life." A holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showed a planet rotating slowly, covered in what looked like brown and gray storms. First, gravity. A Class 12 world has gravity exceeding 0.4 standard units. This level of gravitational pull causes skeletal damage, organ stress, and tissue compression in most species. Extended exposure leads to death. Yuna looked at the number on the screen. She did some quick math in her head. Standard gravity at the Academy was 0.3 units. Earth's gravity was... She paused. Earth's gravity was 1.0 units. That was more than double what the professor called deadly. She said nothing. She kept writing. Second, radiation. Class 12 worlds often have thin or damaged atmospheres that allow stellar radiation to reach the surface. This radiation causes cellular damage, mutation, and death. Survival on the surface without protection is measured in minutes. Yuna thought about summers at the beach. She thought about sunburns and sunscreen, and the warm feeling of sunlight on her face. She had spent entire days under Earth's sun, hours and hours. Her skin would turn red and then brown, and her grandmother would scold her for not wearing a hat. The knot in her stomach grew tighter. Third, temperature extremes. Many Class 12 worlds experience what we call seasonal variation. The planet's axis tilts as it orbits its star, Gaul, causing dramatic temperature shifts across the surface. These shifts can range from -100 to +50 on the standard scale within a single orbital period. Yuna's pen stopped moving. She knew those numbers. She knew them very well. They were not theoretical to her. They were winter and summer. They were snow and heat waves. They were normal. Around her, students were making sounds of horror. The crystal bean was vibrating so hard that Yuna could feel it through her seat. The jellyfish creature had retreated to the far side of its sphere. Fourth, water. This may seem strange to some of you, but Class 12 worlds often have large amounts of liquid dihydrogen monoxide on their surface and in their atmosphere. This substance falls from the sky, fills vast basins, and can even freeze into solid form. It is highly reactive and can dissolve most organic materials over time. Yuna closed her eyes. She thought about rain. She thought about swimming in the ocean as a child. She thought about drinking a glass of cold water on a hot day. Fifth, tectonic activity. The ground on a Class 12 world is unstable. Planetary crust moves and shifts. Mountains rise, valleys fall. Without warning, the ground itself can break apart, releasing heat and toxic gases from below. Earthquakes. The professor was describing earthquakes. Sixth, predation. Class 12 worlds produce life forms of extreme aggression. These creatures hunt and kill other life forms for energy. They can be found in water, on land, and in the air. Some can move faster than transport vehicles. Some hunt in groups with coordinated strategy. Yuna thought about lions, about wolves, about sharks and eagles, and the neighbor's dog that once chased her down the street when she was 7. Her hands were shaking now. She put down her pen because she could not hold it steady. The professor continued speaking, but Yuna was no longer listening. She was counting. She was adding up all the things the professor was describing. She was realizing something that made her feel cold all over. The professor was not describing a theoretical nightmare. The professor was describing her. Home, the professor was describing Earth. And everyone in this room thought it was impossible for anyone to live there. Professor Velith moved through the center of the room like a slow-moving flame. Her light cast soft shadows on the walls as they continued the lecture. Every word they spoke made Yuna's heart beat faster. Let us now discuss the biological hazards present on Class 12 Deathworlds, the professor said. These are perhaps the most disturbing aspects of such environments. The holographic display changed. It now showed microscopic images of small organisms. They looked harmless enough to Yuna. They looked like the pictures in her biology textbooks from middle school. Microbial life on Class 12 worlds is uniquely aggressive, like the cooperative microorganisms found on most life-bearing planets. These organisms wage constant warfare against any hosts they encounter. They invade the body. They multiply, consume resources meant for the host organism. Many can kill within hours of infection. A student made a sound like breaking glass. Yuna's translator told her this meant extreme distress. Several other students were leaving the room. Their floating seats carried them toward the exits as they fled from the horrible information. Yuna did not move. She could not move. She was thinking about every cold she had ever caught. Every fever, every stomach illness, she thought about. The flu that had kept her in bed for a week when she was 12. She thought about her immune system, which had been fighting these invisible wars since the day she was born. Furthermore, the professor continued, as if students were not fleeing in terror around them, the atmosphere of Class 12 worlds often contains dangerous levels of free oxygen. Oxygen is highly reactive. It corrodes metal. It burns organic tissue over time through a process called oxidation. Breathing such an atmosphere would be fatal to most species within moments. Yuna breathed in. Yuna breathed out. The air in this room was mostly nitrogen with small amounts of other gases. She had been given a supplement during her medical check, because the station's air did not have enough oxygen for her. Not enough oxygen. She was the only one in this room who needed more of the poison. The psychological effects of surviving on such a world would be equally devastating, the professor said. Their voice was calm and academic. They were discussing this the way Yuna's teachers had discussed ancient history. Interesting but distant, not real. Not happening to anyone in the room. The constant threat of death from multiple sources would create permanent stress responses. Creatures evolved on such worlds would live in a state of constant fear. They would develop paranoid behaviors. They would become aggressive toward any perceived threat. Yuna thought about her mother, about her father, about her grandmother who had raised her after her parents worked long hours. Her grandmother was the kindest person she had ever known. She made soup when Yuna was sick. She sang songs while doing laundry. She laughed at bad jokes and cried at sad movies. Was her grandmother aggressive? Paranoid? Living in constant fear? No, she was just a person. A normal person living a normal life on what this professor was calling an impossible nightmare world. Perhaps most disturbing, the professor said, is the requirement for energy intake. Creatures on Class 12 worlds must consume other life forms to survive. They must kill and eat plants, animals, or both. This creates a cycle of endless violence at every level of the ecosystem. The crystal being next to Yuna fell from their seat. They hit the floor with a sound like a wind chime falling off a porch. Other students rushed to help them. Yuna heard words like shock and medical assistance required. She stayed in her seat. Her hands gripped her tablet so hard that her knuckles turned white. The professor paused the lecture while medical helpers came to take the crystal student away. The room was now half empty. Those who remained looked shaken. Some were holding on to each other. Some were making sounds of quiet distress. I apologize for the disturbing nature of this material, the professor said after the crystal student was gone. Class 12 Deathworlds represent the extreme edge of what we study. They are important precisely because they show us what life should never have to face. No known sapient species has ever evolved on such a world. The conditions are simply too hostile for the development of intelligence. Yuna's translator repeated that last sentence to make sure she understood it correctly. No known sapient species. Too hostile for intelligence. She thought about her civilization. She thought about the cities and the libraries and the museums. She thought about music and art and the poetry her grandmother loved. She thought about hospitals and schools and governments. She thought about the rockets that had carried her people to the moon and then to Mars and then to the stars. All of that had come from Earth. All of that had been built by people who lived on what this professor was calling a Class 12. Deathworld, professor, a student said from somewhere behind. Yuna, has any survey team ever found evidence of life on a Class 12 world? Even simple life. Simple life, yes, the professor replied. Some Class 12 worlds do produce basic organisms. These organisms are always small, simple, and confined to the least hostile areas of their planets. They hide in caves. They live in the depths of liquid basins. They survive by avoiding the worst of their world's dangers. Yuna thought about elephants, about whales, about ancient trees that had lived for thousands of years. She thought about humans climbing mountains and crossing deserts and building cities in places that tried to kill them. None of that sounded like hiding, but complex life. The professor said, multicellular organisms with advanced nervous systems, tool users, civilization builders. Their light flickered in what Yuna had learned to recognize as amusement. That is simply impossible. The energy required to develop such complexity would be consumed entirely by survival. There would be nothing left for advancement. Yuna stood up. She did not plan to do it. Her body simply moved on its own. Her seat floated backward as she rose. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ in the room turned toward her. "Observer Park?" the professor said. "Do you have a question?" Yuna's heart was pounding. Her palms were sweating. She felt the way she had felt before her final exams at university, or before job interviews, or before any moment when everything depended on what she said next. "Professor," she said. Her voice was steady even though she did not feel steady. "I have a question about the planet in your model." "Of course. Please ask, what is its designation?" "The Class 12 world you have been describing." "Does it have a name?" The professor's light flickered. "It is not a single world observer park. It is a composite model. A theoretical construction based on data from many surveys. We combine the worst characteristics from many worlds to create an educational example. No actual planet has all of these features." "That would be too unlikely, I see." Yuna took a breath. "But if such a planet did exist, what would its characteristics be?" "Exactly. In terms that I could compare to known worlds," the professor seemed pleased by the question. "Very well. Gravity at 1.0 standard units. Orbit around a yellow main sequence star at a distance that allows liquid water. A 23-degree axial tilt, creating seasonal variation. Approximately 70% surface water coverage. Active tectonic plates. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere at about 21% oxygen content. Diverse ecosystem with predators, prey, and decomposers at all levels." Yuna nodded slowly. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump. "Professor," she said, "I know that planet. I grew up there." The room went completely silent. "That planet is called Earth," Yuna said, "and you have just described my childhood." The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. Then everything happened at once. Professor Veleth's light flickered wildly, changing colors faster than Yuna could track. The jellyfish student sphere cracked and began leaking water across the floor. 5 more students fainted. Emergency alerts began flashing on the walls. Somewhere an alarm started making a sound like a dying whale. Yuna stood in the middle of it all, feeling strangely calm. She had said the truth. The truth was the truth. She could not take it back even if she wanted to. That is, Professor Veleth struggled to form words. Their light had turned a pale, sickly green. "That is not possible." "Observer Park? You must be mistaken. Perhaps your translator has made an error." "My translator's working fine," Yuna said. "Earth. Sol 3. 3rd planet from a yellow star in the outer arm of this galaxy. That is where humans come from. All of us. But the conditions you describe," student spoke from somewhere on her left. Their voice shook. "You would die, instantly. The gravity alone would crush your internal organs." Yuna held up her hand. "This is my hand. I have used it every day for 24 years. It works fine. Earth's gravity does not crush me because my body evolved there. My bones are dense. My muscles are strong. My heart pumps against that gravity every second of every day." "The radiation," another student said. "The stellar radiation would destroy your cells within minutes." "I used to play outside for hours," Yuna said. "We call it sunlight. It feels warm and nice. Our skin produces something called melanin to protect us. Sometimes we get burns if we stay out too long, but they heal." "Burns?" The students sounded like they might also faint. "Your star burns you, and you call this normal?" "We call it a sunburn. It hurts for a few days, and then it goes away. Children get them all summer. It is not a big deal." The room erupted in noise. Everyone was talking at once. Medical staff arrived through doors that appeared in the walls. They began helping the fainted students. Someone was screaming in a frequency that Una could not hear but could feel in her teeth. Professor Veleth floated toward her. Up close, she could see that the professor was trembling. Their light was unstable, flickering between colors without pattern. "Observer Park," the professor said. Their voice was very quiet. "Please tell me you are joking. Please tell me this is some kind of human humor that I do not understand." Yuna looked at the professor with genuine sympathy. She understood that she had just broken something in their mind. She had taken their careful understanding of the universe and turned it upside down. "I am not joking," she said gently. "Everything you described is real. I have lived through all of it. Every human has. The water falling from the sky, rain. I love rain. When I was a child, I would run outside when it rained and dance in it. My grandmother would yell at me to come inside because I would get wet, but I never listened. Danced in it." Yes, many humans do. We find it fun. Professor Velith made a sound that her translator could not interpret. It might have been despair. It might have been confusion. It might have been the sound of a worldview collapsing. A new person entered the room. Yuna recognized Quan Doin, another human observer who worked in the medical wing. He was tall and thin, with kind eyes and a worried expression. He pushed through the chaos until he reached her side. "Yuna," he said in Korean. "What happened?" "They called me and said there was an emergency involving a human." "I told them about Earth," she said, also in Korean. Doyen's eyes went wide. "Oh no, oh yes. How much did you tell them?" The professor was describing Classwell Deathworlds. They described gravity, radiation, seasons, water, tectonic activity, predators, and microbes. I told them that was my home. Do-Yan put his face in his hands. I was hoping they would find out more gradually. Maybe over a few months. With therapy available? Too late for that now. Around them, the chaos continued. More medical staff arrived. Someone was projecting calming images on the walls. A soft voice was reciting something that sounded like a meditation exercise. Several students had formed a group hug and were crying together. A being made entirely of smooth gray metal approached them. Yuna recognized them as Administrator Holan, the person in charge of exchange students. "Observer Park. Observer Quan." The administrator's voice was flat and mechanical, showing no emotion. "I have been informed of the situation. We need to talk. Privately." They followed the administrator to a small room off the main hallway. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss. The administrator stood very still, looking at Yuna with sensors that glowed faintly red. "Is it true?" the administrator asked. "Your homeworld matches the Class 12 profile." "Yes," Yuna said. "All humans come from this world." "Yes, 8 billion of you. Almost 9 billion now, I think." The administrator was quiet for a long moment. When they spoke again, their voice had changed slightly. There was something in it that might have been fear. "Observer Park, I need you to understand something. In all our history, in all our exploration of this galaxy, we have never encountered a sapient species from a Class 12 world. We did not believe it was possible. Our entire classification system is based on the assumption that such life cannot develop intelligence." "I understand," Yuna said. "You do not understand." The administrator stepped closer. "If what you say is true, then humans are something we have never seen before. You are not just a new species joining the galactic community. You are a category that we did not know existed. You are impossible." Doyen raised his hand. "With respect, Administrator, we are clearly not impossible. We are standing right here, yes?" The administrator's red sensors flickered. "That is exactly what concerns me." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. She had not thought about what this meant for her people. She'd only been thinking about the lecture, about the mistake, about the truth that needed to be told. But now, she saw it from the other side. 9 billion impossible beings, living on an impossible world, building an impossible civilization. And now, those impossible beings had left their impossible world and found their way to the stars. What did that look like to everyone else? It looked terrifying. "We are not dangerous," Yuna said quickly. "Humans are peaceful. We came here to learn and to share knowledge. We want to be friends with other species." The administrator made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was not a happy sound. "Observer Park, your species evolved on a world that would kill any of us within hours. You breathe poison. You bathe in acid. You experience temperature extremes that would shatter my body. You fight off microbial invasions every single day. The administrator paused. And you think telling me that you want to be friends will make me less afraid? Yuna had no answer to that. She looked at Doyan. He looked back at her with the same helpless expression. They had told the truth. The truth was supposed to be good. The truth was supposed to help, but sometimes the truth was so big, so strange, so impossible, that it broke things instead of fixing them. And Yuna was beginning to realize that she might have broken something very important today. The next 3 days were the strangest of Yuna's life. And considering she had spent the last month living on a space station with aliens, that was saying something. The Academy did not panic. Not officially. But emergency meetings were called at every level. Scientists requested permission to study the human observers. Diplomats sent urgent messages to their home governments. The news spread through the station like fire. Then it spread beyond the station to the rest of the galaxy. Humans were Deathworlders. Real Deathworlders. The first intelligent species ever discovered from a Class 12 world. Yuna and Doyan agreed to be examined. They had no reason to refuse. They had nothing to hide. And if their cooperation helped calm things down, they were happy to help. The medical center was very white and very clean. Yuna sat on a table that adjusted itself to her body, while doctors of 3 different species scanned her with devices she did not recognize. Doyan sat on a similar table nearby, answering questions about human biology. Our bone density is remarkable, one doctor said. They were a small being covered in soft blue fur, with large eyes that blinked sideways. You have more calcium per unit than any species in our database. Your skeleton could survive impacts that would shatter most organic frames. We break bones sometimes, Yuna said. When I was 7, I fell from a tree and broke my arm. You broke your arm? Yes, the bone cracked. It came through the skin a little bit. Every doctor in the room stopped moving. And then one of them asked in a very small voice. My grandmother said it. She pushed the bone back into place and wrapped it in cloth. Then we went to a hospital and they put a hard cast on it. After 6 weeks, the cast came off and my arm was fine. Your bone healed itself? Yes, human bones do that. They grow back together when they break. It hurt a lot, but I was climbing trees again by the end of summer. One doctor left the room. Yuna heard sounds that might have been crying from the hallway. Doyan was having a similar conversation on his side of the room. You eat capsaicin? A doctor was asking him. Deliberately. For pleasure. It is a common spice in Korean food, Doyan said. My mother makes a soup called kimchi jjigae. It is very spicy. I eat it at least twice a week when I am home. Capsaicin is a chemical weapon. It causes pain and inflammation in organic tissue. It is used for defense by certain plants against predators. Yes, I know. That is why we eat it. The pain feels good to us. It releases chemicals in our brain that make us happy. The doctor made a sound like a deflating balloon. You deliberately consume a substance that causes you pain because the pain makes you happy. When you say it like that, it sounds strange, Doyan admitted. But yes. Many humans enjoy spicy food. Some of us compete to eat the spiciest food possible. We have contests. Contests to experience the most pain. Basically, yes, the doctor left the room. They did not come back. As the examinations continued, more and more facts about human life came out. Each one seemed to horrify the aliens more than the last. Humans domesticated predators. They took wolves, creatures that hunted in packs and could kill large animals and turn them into pets. They let these predators live in their homes. They let them sleep in their beds. They called them good boys and gave them treats. Humans consumed ethanol for recreation. Ethanol was a poison that killed brain cells and damaged organs. Humans knew this and drank it anyway because it made them feel relaxed and social. Humans ran for fun, not running away from danger, not running toward food. Just running, for no reason, as fast as they could, for as long as they could, till their bodies hurt and they could barely breathe. They called this exercise, and they did it voluntarily. Humans swam in large bodies of water filled with creatures that could eat them. They called this going to the beach, and they looked forward to it all year. Humans climbed mountains. They walked straight up into frozen areas where the air was too thin to breathe, and the cold could kill them in hours. When they reached the top, they took pictures and then walked back down. They did this for fun. Yuna watched the doctors react to each piece of information. She had never thought of her life as unusual. Everything she described was just normal. It was what everyone she knew did. It was what her parents did and her grandparents did and their grandparents before them. But seeing it through alien eyes, she began to understand. Humans were not normal. Humans were survivors. Humans were creatures that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day. And instead of dying, they had thrived. They had spread across their entire planet. They had built civilizations on every continent. They had learned to control fire and split atoms and reach the stars, and they had done all of it. Without even realizing how impossible it was, on the third day, Administrator Holland called Yuna and Doyan to a meeting room. Several other officials were there, including Professor Velith, who had apparently recovered from their shock. "We have made a decision," the administrator said. "Based on our examinations and our research into your species' history, we are recommending a complete reclassification of humanity." "What does that mean?" Yuna asked. "When your species first contacted us, you were classified as a standard emergent species. This is the category for new civilizations that have recently developed space travel. It comes with certain assumptions about your biology, your history, and your capabilities." "Those assumptions were wrong," Doyan said. "It's very wrong," the administrator agreed. "We assumed you were like us. We assumed you came from a world like ours. We assumed that your bodies and minds worked in ways we could understand." Professor Velith's light flickered softly. "We were very, very wrong. The new classification will recognize what you actually are," the administrator said. "You are a Deathworld species. The first we have ever encountered. This will change how the galaxy sees you. It will change the treaties and agreements we have with your government. It will change everything." Yuna felt the weight of those words, everything. It was a big word. "Will this be good for us?" she asked. "For humans?" The administrator was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. Some species will fear you. They will see you as monsters from a nightmare world. They will want to stay far away from you. And others will respect you. They will see your survival as the greatest achievement in the history of life. They will want to learn from you." The administrator paused. "And some will want you as allies. Because if war ever comes, they will want the Deathworlders on their side." Yuna thought about that. She thought about her grandmother singing songs while making soup. She thought about children dancing in the rain. She thought about her people, who had built beautiful things in a dangerous world because they did not know any other way to live. "We are not monsters," she said quietly. "We are just people. We love, and we laugh, and we cry. We create art and music and stories. We are not defined by our planet. We are defined by what we do with our lives." The administrator made a sound that her translator called acknowledgement with uncertainty. Perhaps they said, "But the galaxy will need time to understand that." "The galaxy will need time to understand you." Yuna nodded. She could accept that. Time was something humans knew how to use. After all, it had been surviving the impossible for a very long time. 6 months passed. The galaxy changed, slowly, the way galaxies do. News of humanity's true nature spread from system to system, world to world. Some species reacted with fear. They closed their borders and refused all contact with human ships. Some reacted with fascination. They sent scientists and diplomats and artists, all eager to learn about the impossible Deathworlders. And some reacted with something that surprised Yuna most of all. They reacted with hope. Messages came from planets across the galaxy. From species that lived on difficult worlds. From beings that had always been told their homes were too harsh, too dangerous, too hostile for real civilization. They saw humanity, and they saw a possibility. If humans could build cities and libraries and spaceships on a Class 12 Deathworld, then maybe there was hope for everyone. Yuna received one of these messages from a young being on a volcanic world. The message was simple. "Thank you for showing us that survival is not the end. It is the beginning." She kept that message saved on her tablet. She read it when she felt tired or sad or overwhelmed by everything that had changed. The Academy invited her to stay, not as an observer anymore, but as something new. They created a position just for her, guest lecturer for Deathworld adaptation studies. She would teach students about Earth, about humans, about what it meant to live on a world that wanted you dead. Her first class was on a morning when the artificial sun outside the station windows was colored soft gold. Yuna stood at the front of a lecture hall, much like the one where everything had started. Her students filled the seats above and around her. They were beings of crystal and light and gas and metal. They were curious and nervous and afraid. Do-Yan sat in the back row. He had become her unofficial assistant, helping her prepare materials and translate cultural concepts. He gave her a thumbs up as she prepared to speak. Yuna took a deep breath. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about her parents. She thought about everyone on Earth who was going about their normal lives, never knowing that they were legends in the making. "Welcome to Deathworld Adaptation Studies," she said. "My name is Park Yuna, and I am going to tell you about my home." She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared behind her. Earth, blue and white and green, spinning slowly in the darkness of space. "This is Earth, Sol 3, a Class 12 Deathworld. The most dangerous type of planet known to produce life."
Oh.
She smiled. "I think it is beautiful." Students stared at the image. Some of them made sounds of fear. Some of them made sounds of wonder. Both reactions were correct. "When I was 7 years old," Yuna said, "I fell from a tree and broke my arm. The bone cracked and came through my skin. It was the most painful thing I had ever experienced." She paused, letting the horror of that sink in. "My grandmother found me crying in the yard. She picked me up and carried me inside. She cleaned the wound and pushed the bone back into place. Then she took me to a hospital where doctors put a cast on my arm. 6 weeks later, the cast came off. 2 months after that, I was climbing trees again." A student raised what might have been a hand. "You went back to climbing trees? After the tree hurt you?" "The tree did not hurt me," Yuna said gently. "I hurt myself by falling. And I learned to be more careful. But I did not stop climbing. If we stopped doing everything that ever hurt us, we would never do anything at all." She clicked to the next image. It showed a family having a picnic in a park. The sun was shining. Children were playing. A dog was running across the grass. This is a typical Earth activity. We go outside under our radiation-emitting sun, and we sit on the ground, which is full of insects and microbes. We eat food that we brought with us, food that will spoil if we do not eat it quickly enough. And we call this fun. "Why?" a student asked. Their voice was genuinely confused. "Why would you do this?" Yuna thought about the question carefully. It was a good question. It deserved a good answer. "Because the sun feels warm on our skin," she said. "Because the grass smells sweet. Because the food tastes better when we eat it with people we love. Because the dog is happy to run, and we are happy to watch." She looked at her students, at their strange and beautiful forms, at their fearful and curious faces. On Earth, danger is everywhere. This is true. We cannot escape it. We cannot hide from it. So instead, we learn to find joy in the middle of it. We learn to create moments of happiness, even when the world around us is harsh. We learn that the beauty of life is not diminished by the danger of it. Sometimes the beauty is greater because of the danger. The room was very quiet. "You studied Deathworlds as nightmares," Yuna said, "as places of horror and death, and they are that. I will not lie to you. Earth has killed many, many humans over our history. It continues to kill us today." She clicked to another image. A mountain climber standing on a snowy peak, arms raised in triumph. "But we do not hate our world. We love it. We climb its mountains and swim in its oceans and run through its forests. We plant gardens and raise children and build homes. We do not survive despite our world. We survive because of it. It made us who we are. It made us strong and creative and determined. It taught us that anything worth having is worth fighting for." She looked at Do-Yan in the back row. He was smiling. "You were afraid of us," Yuna said to her students. "I understand why. We come from a place that terrifies you. Our bodies are adapted to conditions that would kill you. Our history is full of violence and struggle and death. She stepped closer to the front row of seats. We are also artists and poets and musicians. We create things of beauty because beauty matters to us. We help strangers because kindness matters to us. We love deeply and fiercely because we know how fragile life can be. A student made a soft sound. Her translator called it emotional resonance. Something like being moved. We are Deathworlders, Una said. This is true, but we are also dreamers. We looked up at the stars from our dangerous world, and we dreamed of reaching them. And now we have. We are here among you, not as conquerors or monsters, but as neighbors. As friends, if you will let us be, she smiled at her students. Do not be afraid of us. We have survived our world, and we have done it without losing our hearts. We can laugh and love and hope even in the darkest places. That is not a weakness. That is our greatest strength. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, one student began making a sound. Her translator told her it was applause. Another student joined. Then another. Soon, the whole room was filled with the sounds of many species showing appreciation in many different ways. In the back row, Doyan wiped his eyes. He was still smiling. Eunice stood at the front of the room, looking at the hologram of Earth spinning behind her. Her home. Her impossible, beautiful, deadly home. She had come to this academy as an observer. Someone who watched but did not participate. Someone who was new and strange and did not belong. Now she was something else. She was a teacher, a bridge between worlds, a voice for her people.